Hey, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. We have Heneka Watkis-Porter all the way from Jamaica today, and she's an entrepreneur, a coach, a 4 times author, an international speaker, and the host of the Entrepreneurial You podcast that she's been doing over 3+ years, I believe, where she has interviewed some of the big names out there, Seth Godin, Richard Branson, Lee Dumas, and others. She's also the CEO of Patwa Apparel, and we'll find out what that's all about. And she's also been managing Caribbean's first virtual conference and expo. We'll learn about that too. Having said that, let's go ahead and welcome her and hear from Heneka herself. Welcome, Heneka.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be here, and just want to say shout out to all of your community members.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about yourself. When did you embark on this journey? You're juggling a lot of balls here right now. So when did you embark on this journey, and how did you make the pivot into apparel and then virtual summits? What's going on?
All right. So I grew up in rural area of Jamaica, St. Mary, and of course from very humble beginnings. Never had the fame and fortune that some people crave. And I just, I was brought up by an adopted grandmother who, did her best to ensure that I got an education, and as well as, supported by my maternal grandfather as well. So that's pretty much how I started. I went to high school in that same parish. Then later I left and started working. Once I started working, I recognized, well, even before I started working, I had this deep desire to start my own business. And in wanting to start my own business, after agonizing over many various options, I landed on Patwa Apparel, which it was the inception. It was all about the Jamaican language and how I would use, the vernacular and put an interpretation in English and make it kind of a lifestyle brand for those that are really, having this affinity towards Jamaica. So that's pretty much how I started. And after that, I did it for a few years part-time, and I eventually went full-time in the business. And one thing leads to another. And what I find is that though I was doing this business, which somewhat I'm no longer doing it, but it's not quite dead because I intend to look to get a partner to resurrect it to its fullest. But so many mistakes from that. But one thing led to another, and I started to do, speaking to various audiences, not just in Jamaica, but also just recently I'm coming out of the US, doing 3 speaking engagements there, and other areas in the Caribbean and so on. So it's been that journey. And then I recognize that my passion is really about sharing knowledge and paying it forward, my entrepreneurial journey, sharing that with others. And then I discovered podcasting 3 years ago. When I discovered podcasting, I'm like, oh my gosh, here it is. I've always wanted to do media, because whilst I was in university, initially I applied to do mass communications, and that application went through, it was not accepted. I ended up doing management studies and sociology as a double major. So having that desire as well to be a part of media, and then coming full circle, discovering podcasting, and from that connecting with some of the world's best, like you have mentioned in your intro, connecting with them. I later discovered, I want to do a virtual conference and expo to really now connect, all these persons that I've been interviewing with my community. And so in 2017 rather, the same year I started the podcast, a few months after I did the virtual summit, and it's as if life is coming back full circle, because I'm in the middle now of planning another one, because the coronavirus has caused us to pivot. Because I was in the middle of planning a live event, LeaderCast Live, which is broadcasted from the US. And, I've been streaming into Jamaica for over 2 years now. It would have been our 5th event in May, and now having to pivot because, there's this outbreak of the coronavirus, and now it has caused me to go back to where I started, which is my virtual event, which I'm now planning. So,
all right, awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your previous, when you were actually working, your previous life.
Mm-hmm.
So what were you doing? Were you on a job before you started the apparel company?
Right. So I was doing prior to that, I worked with, two major companies. I mean, my first job out of high school was with the government. I worked in an accounting, area. I didn't even like accounts, but anyway, I started, from a very clerical level. And then after that, I got a job at one of our major distribution companies in Jamaica, in the field of procurement. Pretty much started at a clerical level as well, and moved up to a buyer. So in the procurement department, which is, it was a lot of work, a lot of fun, but a lot of hard work. Eventually I left that job and moved into the same, area of procurement. Again, this time with, well, it was a quasi government setting. It was part government at the time, part, kind of a private, like, operation. So it was with the Port Authority of Jamaica, and it was, of course, it's the seventh, largest natural harbor in the world. And nobody leaves that job, right? Because, that position was to be buying parts for that port, right? Nobody leaves that job, but it was then that I started agonizing over doing my own business. And the idea came to me one day when I was actually recuperating from a minor operational procedure I'd done at one of our university hospitals here. So that's how it started on August 7th, 2007, when the idea came and I acted on the idea.
Awesome. I see a lot of certificates up on the wall. So,
Yes.
so did you spend a lot of time studying as well?
Well, not really a lot of time. I did high school and I left, I attended sixth form at my own high school. So I spent 7 years there. So for 5 years at the high school level and 2 years at the upper and lower sixth form. Then after that, I worked for a bit, and then I left in 1997 high school, and then I worked up to up to 2011. Yes, I worked up to 2011. In that time between 2003, 2006, I went to university, where initially I did it part-time. So I worked full-time and went to university part-time. In my final year, I worked full-time and went to university full-time. And picture this, I didn't even have a motor vehicle at the time. So it was like suicide. Yeah, it was tough, but I persevered, and I believe I'm all the better for it. So some of those certificates are part-time, short courses that I would have done outside. I would have had voice and speech training. There are some certificates from my high school too, where I did some interesting that you see that, that is why it is important that you do video. Now I get it, because, looking on the wall, it really is a peaceful conversation, right? So part of that is my high school, certificate that I remember entering some race in, I think it was the first time. I was never athletic because I was always hiding away from physical education classes. But in my sixth form year, I think I was in grade 12 at the time, lower six, when I entered races, I think that one says I was placed second and third. I was placed second and third in a race. And then I remember one race I did, Reggie, where, for me, it's such an important lesson of life, really, because I did the 800 meter. I had no stamina for 800 meter. I had no energy, but I did it for the fun of it. But what was looking back was so interesting, that when everybody had completed their laps, everybody had completed and gone off the field long before I was still running my 800 meter race. And you know what? It taught me that I just needed to persevere, even when I'm the only one on the track, right? Absolutely. Complete the race that you have started, finish the race that you've started, because I intended to do that and I did it.
Awesome. That's pretty awesome. I like the way you put all your certificates out there, no matter how big or small they are. And I think that says a lot about it, right? Especially in today's time when we're talking about self-education versus, education at the university. And there's a whole debate going on around, hey, is going to a university really useful? We spend so much money on it and all that. And, different people have different perspectives. I have my own perspectives as well. But I do think it's great that, we to recognize every single thing that we have done throughout your life. And I think it has a place in your life. You are shaped by what you've done throughout your life. And each of those certificates out there is a marker in your life. that tells you a little bit more about yourself to you.
Yes.
Right?
And, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but, even when I look, so let me turn, if I can turn the, a little more and you see. So on the wall, I have all those lanyards.
Yeah.
They mean so much to me. Like, it tells a story. When you look at it, it tells a story of the places that I've been and, the events that would have impacted my life and that I would have had interest in. And a lot of them coming from the days when I promoted Patwa Apparel a lot across the world. And I would have gone to events, and I have all of those. So when I've gone as an attendee, I've gone as somebody who is selling, as a vendor, or it's just or a speaker or a myriad of other things, right? So for me, it is just so important that I just have them there, and I haven't really gone through them in a long while. But I know one of these days I'm just going to, take a pause and just have a look at all the places I've been and how they have impacted my life.
And that's pretty awesome. It's not to show others, but it's for you. It's for you to know how far you've come, and it also gives you the energy to keep going on the journey that you're already on. So that's pretty awesome.
Right. Oh my gosh, this conversation could have been a whole lot about, the things that really impacted and all the things that are on the wall in my little office. Like, this office space is a little room in my house. It is really tiny, but I love it so much because everything in here means so much to me. And I realize, it just embodies who I am. I'm looking at one of the plaques on my wall when I entered into a competition called Capital Quest here in Jamaica. It was for capital to be awarded to companies and investment. And it was not live, but it was a TV series that went on for 7 weeks. And every week it was just so gripping and grilling that every week persons would tune in to see what would happen next. So it was a reality show, and my company was a part of that. So that made me proud. I'm also looking on the wall where I have my trademark from the US and also from Europe, where I trademarked my logo, my brand. And just so many things. Even, oh gosh, let me not get carried away. Let me take it back from me.
No, that's pretty awesome.
Going down memory lane right now, and it's just interesting.
One of the questions that I did have for you is, you mentioned going from working to becoming an entrepreneur when you started Patwa, and then after that you went on further to discover podcasting, decided to get into podcasting, and now you've got courses where you're trying to help others and all that. So that's an evolutionary journey as you go along. What are some of the things that you faced that probably brought you to the edge of giving up? And you did not give up, it's pretty evident. But what are some of the pivots, some of the struggles that you've seen as a part of your journey?
How long do we have? All right, so here's the thing. My life, I think, embodies one of resilience, success, triumph, victory. And those are not traits because they're in and of themselves, but they're traits that arise from the circumstances that I have gone through as a person. From a very young age, I was born to a teenage mom, never had dad around, never knew him until I was 11. I was abused and all of those things. But it's interesting that when somebody goes through those, you can take two options. You can choose to do one of two things. You can choose to, see it as an excuse to for it to hold you back and blame everybody in the world but yourself. Or you can look at those things that you've been through and determine in your heart that they are going to be motivating forces for you. They're going to be factors that motivate and inspire you. And so I have chosen to let them motivate and inspire me. But even with Patwa Apparel at the start of it, there were moments when I thought, why did I even leave my full-time job to do this thing? Because, when I started at home, I started part-time when I was working. And then eventually I quit my job and, work from home until after a while I got a physical space, which in retrospect, that was a bad idea, more of an ego boosting trip than it was anything else. Right. But it was those moments sometimes when I didn't see the sales coming in when I needed to see the sales coming in. And it was very disheartening for me. I mean, the brand has gone through some valleys. There are moments when it got disheartened that I really don't want. But coupled with that, so I was always trying other things. And, one of the things I started was a sauce line. And that sauce line was, we started with jam, Jamaican jams, jerk sauce and barbecue sauce. And in line with where my Patwa Apparel brand is, which is a focus on the Jamaican language, I created a name for that brand, which was in line with, the culture, which was a name, a name based on a dialogue or a dialect or Patwa. And in selecting that name for this sauce line, it was doing very well. I got featured on TV for it. It was launched. The media was there to support me. I traveled overseas to seek buyers, all of those things. And then in the middle of all of that, even got grant funding. In the middle of all of that, a restaurant who had the same name for what I'd named my sauce came after me, say that I was to say that I was infringing on copyright on their trademark. Of course, they weren't even registered, but I don't want to dwell too much on that because, we eventually have settled because I decided that nothing is worth my peace of mind. So I had to settle financially. And, in retrospect, it's a decision that I would not have made. But I have to take comfort in the fact that when you're in business, you make a decision, right? And it's important, whether it's the wrong or the right one, it's important for you to take a decision. And in taking that decision, though it may not have been the best decision at the time, I took it and I have to be at peace with it. But I had done so many labels and stuff because it was going to go I even got nominated for best new food item in the premier food awards that is here. And that was just so huge, right? I didn't win the nomination, win in the category, but being nominated was amazing. And, I have a lot of stuff, keepsake for that. But it was just recently that I went through those labels because I was just, although I'd given up, to quit and say, you know what, I'm not going to pursue this anymore. But for some reason, I held on to the labels because there were lots of labels. I held on to them. And that incident happened or settled maybe about 3 years ago. And it wasn't up until sometime last year that I finally became at peace with the idea of letting go. Letting go of the labels and discarding of them. And I think I only kept one because I know you can tell that I love the memories to look back and trace my life and stuff. So it was a very hard thing. And the thing about me is that I've always been one to keep going. So sometimes I didn't pause long enough to face the emotions that go along with each event. And so it was like, okay, it's nothing. You just keep going because that's what we do. You just keep going. But when I take a pause long enough to reflect on how far I've come and what, the impact and what each of these things meant and so on, it put things into perspective for me and teach me about myself and, what to do next time and how to do it better next time and so on. So there have been many struggles. Even when I was doing, Capital Quest, which was that TV show, there many days I wanted to give up because I was in competition with some of the best entrepreneurs in Jamaica, and it was really hard. And I can't, just running a business alone is hard, let alone you're competing. And it was the call times alone, like we had to be there sometimes from 5 a.m., and go up to all 11 p.m. sometimes. So it was hard. So that was physically grueling. But not only was it physically grueling, it was mentally as well. You had to, be on your toes and stuff. And it was during that time that I was also faced with my grandfather, my ailing grandfather, who I was taking care of, who later died. And I was going through what we call church hurt at the time. And sometimes relationship issues. So it was a number of things. And having look back in retrospect and see that, what, you've been through it all, and just, yeah, you've been through it all.
One of the things that I say is one of the things we need to avoid in life is regret,
yes.
which is I could have done that, I should have done that. If I had done that, I would have been here. You should never have that. Or things that, maybe I shouldn't have done that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I see that a lot with you when you talk about taking decisions and owning those decisions, no matter the outcome, whether good or bad. And I think that's a great, great thing because, that's how you progress. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look back, you can definitely say you have no regrets because, you did what you had to do at a point in time and you are where you are because of the decisions that you made.
Exactly.
That's pretty awesome. When you actually began podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
take us through your podcasting journey and how did you land these big names? I'm sure the listeners would be interested in that.
Oh, that journey of podcasting. So it was during that time when I was looking for the next best thing because my business, as I mentioned, was kind of going, being on a downward spiral. And I wanted to find a way. So let's fast track. During that time I was doing the business, it's when I started writing my books in the middle of it. And it's when I started a radio show, a traditional radio show here on one of our stations in Jamaica. And I did it because I wanted to reach a broader audience. It was aired in Jamaica, but it was also streamed so that the diaspora had access to it. But I wanted bigger. And I remember attending a conference and speaking, like, it's not just any one thing, but I suppose I'll share this one part because there are many dots connecting to get to that point. But one of them that stands out is the fact that I went to this conference. Somebody, a friend who's our friend, spoke, and I've always heard of her. In fact, she was actually on my radio version of the show. I worked as a producer, so I was not the one who directly contacted her. So the producer got her on my show, and I met her at the conference in person. When she finished the panel, I kind of asked her, so how do you manage to get all these sponsors and stuff? And I'm doing this show and sometimes it's such a struggle. And so she was telling me that, perhaps the best thing to do is to kind of go, look at the digital options, create a following online so that no persons can see what you're doing and you become more attractive to sponsors. So in saying that, there was another person at the conference or the event who reached out to me as well and, suggested to me a podcast. So when I connected again with the first person, the friend who reached out, I spoke with first, and I told her that this, person suggest a podcast. And she said, oh yeah, podcasting is hot now and so on. And it was at that point that she shared 3 podcasts with me. Mixology by Andrew Warner and, John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneurs on Fire. And there was another one which I don't remember. But I began listening to Entrepreneurs on Fire and I became hooked, literally became hooked to the show. I was listening because all the guests that he was bringing on were inspiring. And I thought, yeah, this is great. And I remember one of the episodes that I listened to, it said something that, if I do a 5-star rate and something about rate and review and send a screenshot, he will do an audio bumper. And so it was at that point that I reached out to him and said, hey, here's my review. I'd love for you to do my audio bumper for a podcast because by now I had determined in my heart that I was going to do a podcast. And he did it in such a quick turnaround time. And, I just sent him the text and he did it and stuff. And since then we've connected, we've met in person. And when I reached out for him to be the first person on my show, he responded graciously. He's been on my virtual summit. So with John Lee Dumas, it was more like, having this relationship, building a relationship with him and genuinely engaged in what he was putting out. And so, one thing leads to another because usually the domino effect takes place. And so because he was gracious enough to be a guest and to be so accommodating and facilitating, I was able now to leverage that and say to others, hey, I have John Lee Dumas on my show. This is what I am about, and so on and so forth. Will you also be a guest? And so the yeses become a lot more. It became easier. And then for Richard Branson, that was different because I am was a Branson Center entrepreneur. We have the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship Caribbean. I was one of the entrepreneurs that's in that center, benefiting from capacity building and so on. So he was coming to Jamaica to relaunch the center, which was relocating from Montego Bay into Kingston at the time, which was in 2017. And that was a day before my birthday. So I reached out to the then CEO and asked, will you be able to make this connection for me to do the interview? And one thing led to another, and I was there, and we had a great time. I shared the story of, when Richard came into the room, he looked at my hair because I had braids and stuff, and, I love colors, and he was there, and he was like, "Oh, I love your hair." And so we did a brief interview, maybe lasted like about 15 minutes or so. And then he jumped off the stool that he was sitting on so quickly, as though, just want the interview to be done, because he's here for fun, not for talking, right? And he jumped off and he took my hair as though, and we were back to back, put it over his head as though he had locks. And that photo kind of went around a bit here in Jamaica. So it was a great time.
Pretty awesome. By the way, John was my first interview as well.
Oh, lovely. He's such a sweet person.
Yeah, he's actually done pretty well for himself.
Yes.
I'm pretty amazed at what he created and how he jumped on the podcasting bandwagon 7+ years ago before it was even,
I think.
yeah, seriously, right? It's only the last year or two that it's kind of been growing as much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then what are your books about? Let's talk about your books.
Sure. So, in the intro, we talked about 4, but by now it's 5. Five
Awesome.
books that I've written. Yes, great. Thanks. So the first book was 15 Hints to Entrepreneurial Success, Lessons from a Caribbean Businesswoman. And that book it came about because I had pretty much winged my way in entrepreneurship, not having what we say the color of connection nor the surname that will open doors for you. But I figured it out. I cracked the code, and I was able to learn a lot, and I wanted to pay that forward. So that's what that first book was about, to share some of the lessons, what allows for and accounts for some of the successes that I've had. The customer service is important, your market or your network and so on. So some of those lessons, and I coined together 15 of those. And then it was, after that, it was a book called Motivate, Inspire, Provoke, which is really a book of quotes that I put together so that I would just inspire people based on the quotes. So that's number 2. Number 3 is a book called Sermon Notes, a 52-week devotional for quiet meditation where, I love to connect with source and calm and relax and just reflect. And number 4, co-authored with Dr. Vanette A. Joseph, is another devotional called According to His Word, a 31-day devotional for entrepreneurs. And the 5th one, which is the one that I'm promoting now, that was just published in January. It's called Podcast Power, the Quick Start Guide to Launching and Leveling Up Your Brand. So all my books are part of my experience and part of who I am. So they're not necessarily all the same. Like, the entrepreneurship book is different from the podcasting book, is different from the devotional, but they all form a part of who I am. And I'm just a dynamic individual who embrace all my different aspects.
Absolutely. And have you self-published these, or have you had a publisher?
Yes. They're all self-published. The first one, though self-published, was done through a publishing house, but they're all self-published.
And where can people find these?
They are available on my website, henekawatkis.com /books, where, on the book tab you find it. They're all available on Amazon as well, amazon.com. So
awesome. Mm-hmm. And so what else are you doing? You've done a lot. We've gone through a whole slew of things that you've done, and I think the last one, or probably the last 2, maybe even not even, I shouldn't even say last. I don't know what you're going to do next, but coaching was one and speaking is the other. So can you talk a little bit about some of your courses or some of the things that you teach?
Right. So, I'll come to that in a minute. Just want to say too that the LeaderCast event is one of the major things that I have been doing, but sadly may have to either cancel or postpone this year's event. Not sure where we'll go just yet based on the coronavirus outbreak. But in terms of the areas in which I teach, so I speak on areas relating to podcasting, relating to entrepreneurship, and even my faith. Talking about, winning at all odds and how to shine regardless. So I'll speak on those topics, and leadership as well. When I do workshops, and my workshops are mainly podcast based, my coaching, entrepreneurship, and podcast related. So you can always connect with me to coach you to start a podcast, or if you believe that you're just too busy. Many consultants and professionals really have a challenge in finding and carving out a time to create their own podcast. So I produce podcasts for professionals who want, and for corporates as well, who just can't seem to find the time to do it. So I'll either coach you to do it, or you can contract me to do it. So that is what I'm really excited about. In addition to putting together right now a conference, a virtual conference. And the first one I did, and I think life is a way of just coming full circle, because I did the virtual conference in 2017. Given what is happening right now, health-wise and so on, and the panic and the anxiety, everybody's home thinking, oh, let's go virtual. So I am actually in high planning mode for my next virtual event, which is going to be somewhere between April and May of this year.
This has been great, Heneka. We've learned a lot about you and the things that you do. So one of the things that I do want to ask is, what would you like your legacy to be? Where do you see yourself, 5, 10, 15 years from now?
All right. So I have a purpose of life transformation through inspiration. So a lot of people I've known to be living vicariously through my eyes and knowing my part of my story, because you never ever know the full story. Doing part of my story and where I'm at today and how I inspire. I want my legacy to be that I inspire you to act and take a decision and to move forward. Whatever it is idea that you have, don't have these great ideas and sit on them. I want you to act. But also, most importantly, I don't necessarily want to be remembered for all the great things that I've done. I want to be remembered for the way that I would have impacted somebody's life to make a difference, for them to make a change. And so one of the things I'm actively trying to find the resources to do right now is for my ministry that is called Grace to Grow, because we all need grace to grow. Had it not been for something that caused a shift in our lives, we would have been down a slippery slope. So I want that legacy to be one that inspire you to know that you have a second chance, or third or fourth or whatever.
And what would be one thing that you would want to leave with our listeners today?
I just want to say thank you so much, first of all, to you, Raji, for having me, but to your listeners, if we do this recording and nobody listens, then perhaps what's the point? So I really thank you for tuning in to listening to this episode, as I talk and share with you and Rajiv what's been happening. Be yourself. Don't be afraid to be you. Everybody else is taken, so it's best that you be yourself.
That's great. And where can people find you?
Absolutely great to share that. So I'm available on all social media, well, not all, but mainly Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And of course, the number one place that you can go and find me is HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. So if you look for my name, Heneka Watkis-Porter, you'll find me on social media. Google has a number of pages. When I Google my name, there are a number of pages that come up with that response. And so when you go to my website, HenekaWatkis-Porter.com, there is a WhatsApp icon towards the end, the bottom right of the page. Just send me a WhatsApp. It comes directly to my phone. I really want to hear from you. I want to connect with you wherever you are in the world. If you are important to me, and I want to hear from you.
Well, thank you so much, Heneka, for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your life story, and your aspirations and your inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reggie. It's a pleasure.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode. Please make sure you tune in to Plan B Success podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform, or you could even go to YouTube, or you could check out the episodes on planb.live or rajivmudumba.com. And please make sure that you subscribe so that you get updates on these episodes coming out pretty much on a weekly basis. There's 3 episodes coming out on a weekly basis. And take a moment to leave a review and a comment on any of the platforms that you subscribe to. Thank you very much.